We're less than 100 days from the general election, and Kentucky is beginning to plan for it by taking a look back at the primary election. What went right? What went wrong? And what can the state do in November? LEX 18's Alex Valverde tells us what Kentucky's Secretary of State had to say this morning in the big story at 5:30.
It's safe to say this year's primary election was unlike any other because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Secretary of State Michael Adams spoke to the Interim Joint Committee on State Government today about that election and how it can help shape the general election in November. He says one big takeaway is that absentee voting worked.
Not only did we make it convenient, but we made it virtually fraud-proof. Although we are still planning for the November election, I can tell you right now, absentee voting will be a big component of that, even if we don't expand absentee voting beyond the current classes of voters who qualify for it.
Adams says they're looking into the load capacity of absentee ballots county clerks and post offices can handle to see if expansion is possible. But Adams says he's not confident they can fully replicate what was done in the primary election, since he expects turnout in November to be 250% higher than in June.
That is based on feedback from state and local election officials from both major parties. They and I are concerned that going from 750,000 absentee ballots to 1.875 million absentee ballots or more would overload and crash our system.
Adams says June's primary also showed early voting worked, but still with only a few voting locations scattered around the state, long lines were a frustration for many voters. Adams says county clerks supports expanding in-person voting in November, so there are opportunities over a number of weeks rather than one day. But he says the challenges include finding enough polling locations and workers.
You can expect to have many more voting locations for the general election than we had in the primary, but how many we can have is ultimately up to the willingness of Kentuckians to be good citizens and lend a hand.
And during the primary, Adams says one silver lining of adjusting to the pandemic was upgrading voting equipment in some counties to allow for paper ballots. Alex Valverde, LEX 18 News.